In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to get a 100% anonymous credit and debit card. Even with the Patriot Act in full effect, there are ways you can do this. Right now, there's actually 4 levels to anonymity when it comes to credit and debit card. Operation Ghost Card. Let's go. Now, as I stated, there are 4 different levels. And I'm going to break these down step by step, so get your pen and paper and get ready to take notes. These are all 4 things that I've personally done over the last 3 years, and I'm going to break them down for you right now. Now, step 1 is going to be a lot less anonymity, but it's going to be the best place to start. It's actually the method that most celebrities use. Step 4 is going to be a lot more in-depth, but all things that you can at some point achieve. So keep that in mind. We're going to go from the least anonymous to serious anonymity, but again, serious anonymity comes with more legwork and a little bit more money. So step 1, what do you do? Well, I use American Express for a lot of things that I do, but you can use American Express, Visa, MasterCard, whatever you use is fine. But for this example, I'm going to use American Express because that's actually what the card that I use. And the first thing you can do is the name change. Now, like I said, this is what most celebrities do. So when a few years ago, I got the American Express Platinum card. Before that, I had the American Express Gold card. And it's just a great card for travel, gets you a lot of perks. And when I got that card, of course, it is completely in my name, 100%. Name, social, the works. But what I did, and this is a personal card, what I did was I got the card and I put it in my safe. Then I went to American Express and I got a second card. But on that second card, I used an alias. Why am I able to use an alias on the second card? Well, the reason I can use an alias on the second card is because I've already committed that I'm responsible for this account. So I put on an alias that I commonly use, and the American Express called me and I said, oh, you know, it's my teenage son. I don't have a teenage son. I do have a teenage daughter. I don't have a teenage son, but I don't want to explain to the representative how my daughter's name is Chad. So I just said, oh, I got a teenage son, getting him a credit card for emergencies, that type of thing. Okay, cool. It's approved. They sent me the card. Now, of course, I don't have a teenage son. It was my card. It was in an alias. My main card is in the safe. I use this card. Now, keep in mind, you cannot show ID when using this card. Now, I don't know about you. I'm in my mid-30s. I don't get ID'd all that much. But if you ever do, you have to make up an excuse why you don't have your ID and move along. But you cannot get ID'd because you will not have an ID to match the name. But for most merchants, I almost never get ID'd. And then buying stuff online, you're not going to have a problem. But this gives you name anonymity, which is very important. That's probably the first layer of anonymity for most of you. It breaks out the name anonymity, which again, if you see a card that says Chad Smith, you're like, okay, cool. And the guy's wearing a hat and glasses and he's kind of like this. But if the card says Ryan Reynolds, people freak out. So this is why a lot of celebrities do this method. Now, the next method I want to talk about is a business card. And this is probably going to be the most valuable method for most of you getting started until you get to the next level 3 and level 4. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to start an LLC. Now, I did a video breaking down how you hide assets. I'll link it up in the cards and you can check that out, exactly how to hide assets. And I go more in depth into this topic, so you can check out that video. But basically, you'll set up an LLC in Wyoming. Now, why would you set up an LLC in Wyoming? Well, Wyoming is 100% anonymous. So let's say my LLC is Cody's company, right? You go, you check it out on the Secretary of State website. Everything's anonymous because it's in a registered agent. So you have no idea who owns that company. In fact, the federal government would actually have to go to the registered agent with a subpoena to get the real records. That's how sealed they are. So you have a huge level of anonymity right there. Now, when you open your bank account, you are going to have to show your articles of incorporation. This is why this is level 2. Now, you're much more anonymous with the name change because the entire account actually is in a business name. Now, what's important here is to get what's called a corporate card. See, what a lot of business cards have done after the Patriot Act is on one side, it'll say ABC Window Washing, and on the other side, it'll say Chad Smith. So it'll say your name and the company. You don't want that because, again, you lose a layer of anonymity. So what you want is the corporate card, and what most banks will issue is a corporate card and a name card. Again, I take my name card, set it with my American Express in the safe. So now I have my alias card and I have my corporate card. Neither one have my real name. Now, just as a sidebar, if you ever do deal with law enforcement, which should not be likely, I haven't dealt with law enforcement in many, decades of doing a teenager doing dumb stuff, but a long time. But that said, if you ever do, you can prove that that alias card is on your American Express account, and you can prove that that's your corporate card. So keep that in mind. You're not breaking any laws, but nobody has your real name or alias as long as these are not sitting next to your driver's license, right? And we'll get into those things. That's a whole different video. But for the card thing, so we've got a name change card, which is very important if you're going to hand it to a merchant, which I take it a step further. I use different services like privacy.com and other services, but I use these alias cards for services to build what's called burner card numbers. But that's more of a digital side. I'm talking about the physical side of cards. So you've got your business corporate card. Now this is really important. You can use this pretty much anywhere, and you're not going to have a lot of issues. Also, I've been ID'd with my business corporate card. They look at my ID, they look at the card, and they just they look confused and they swipe the card. I've never had an issue because your name's not on the card, and they have no reason to believe it's not my company. If I had to, I could show up my website, but I've got a picture of me on the website, you know what I mean? But it's never come to that, right? And the worst case scenario, if it ever did, I guess you would have to move along. But I've used this card more times than I could count for years, and it never had an issue. So these are two good ways, things you can execute right now, so you're not using your real name and you're using a corporate card, which gives you a layer of anonymity. Also, for somebody to figure out who you are, so let's say, people are trying to steal your identity, and identity theft is the biggest reason for privacy in the beginning, for a lot of new people getting into privacy, because it's not if you'll experience identity theft, it's when. And so you got to take action with big data and big tech everywhere. It's taking all your information and plastering it everywhere. You've got to be proactive, or you're going to lose money, time, assets, etc. It happens to millions of people constantly, and it's very unfortunate. So these are the first two ways you can go about doing this. Now we're going to get a little bit more advanced, but I wanted to kind of give you some, right out the beginning of this video, something you could get going with right now. So the next thing, now number 3 is going to be a little more expensive, and number 4 might be a little more realistic for some of you, but it depends on who you are. Number 3 is going to be offshore card. Now you can get a 100% offshore card that has no name, no ID, no address. There's a lot of things you can do to be offshore banking, offshore companies, but you need to keep in mind that there is added risks, and the deposits are a lot bigger. Now I did this a couple years ago, and my initial deposit was 25 grand. Most deposits are much higher than that. I see a lot of deposits where they want 100 grand, some of them are in the 7 figures. But I see one 25 grand that I did. I've seen a couple that are as low as 10 grand. But basically, unless you're willing to deposit 10 grand up front, you're not going to be able to do anything offshore. In fact, most offshore banking requires between 10 to 100,000 to even get started. So there's this idea where a lot of Americans bank offshore. Unless you've got a lot of money, they don't even want to deal with Americans, because American law enforcement is so stringent on these things. The IRS, taxes. These banks won't deal with Americans unless you have a large deposit. It's not worth their time. In fact, most countries have flagged Americans as just hard to deal with, and they don't want to deal with them. It's not worth it. Even though Americans have tons of money, the upper class of America has tons of money, it's not worth it unless it's a very substantial investment right out the gate. So you can do offshore banking, and you can get anonymous cards, but I don't recommend this unless you're a higher net worth individual. You will be able to get anonymity, and you can work with numbered bank accounts, and you can work with PIN numbers, which basically takes you to a point where you don't even have to deal with a lot of this stuff. For a lot of you, that's not even an option, and that's not a direction you're going to go down. But if you want the best level of anonymity, that is by far the best. But the reason it's level 3 is because while it is the best level of anonymity on some regards, it's also in some cases the hardest to achieve and the hardest to spend. Let's go to level 4. Now level 4 is going to be a crypto card. Now, not a general crypto card. And I want to be very clear, and I'm going to break this down for you step by step of how you can achieve real anonymity, because I don't use a crypto card. That is actually completely and utterly unsecure. Now there's a lot of them like BitPay and a lot of other ones out there. I could name like 50 of them, but I'm not going to waste your time or mine. The problem with these is right out the gate, they tell you we want all of your real information. Socials, addresses, you can't even use P.O. boxes, you can't use ghost addresses, they want full names, they want everything. Zero anonymity. There's really no point in using crypto at that point. You've taken out 100%, you've made your company worthless. Like there's this weird mystique around Bitcoin, like, oh, I'm anonymous. No, you're not. Most Bitcoin is every bit as traceable. Actually, most Bitcoin's more traceable than credit card transactions. Like, it's actually kind of sad. Bitcoin is not what a lot of people think. And again, in that video on how to hide assets and the video I did on the crypto that is replacing cash, I recommend you watch those 2 videos, because I break down exactly why Bitcoin is not where you want to be and other options as opposed to that. And I talk about the fungibility and how Bitcoin has none, and I talk about some other things. But what you want to do is you actually want to get a prepaid card, okay? Now there are tons of prepaid cards out there, ones that you can get credit cards that work well with crypto. But again, if you're giving up all your information, you're not really doing anything anonymous. What you want to do is a prepaid card. Now, the card that I got was the American Express SERP. It's a 100% prepaid card. I think it has a small yearly fee. It's not very big, or maybe it's a monthly fee broke down. It's a small fee. And I think with the fee, I pretty much get 0 transactions. But this card is actually not even in my real name. This card is in an alias name. And there are a lot of other cards you can do that where and people will just get like blank visas and things like that. You can get a prepaid anonymous card. There's a lot of them out there, but this is the one I use. And then you can basically top it off. Now, different ways to do this, but you want to get a card where you actually can use cash to put a balance on the card to buy crypto. Now, the only anonymous crypto is Monero. Monero is the only anonymous crypto. Now, when you think about cryptocurrencies, again, I want to break this down for you. If you're using exchanges like Coinbase, or if you're using things like BitPay, you've already lost all your anonymity on that transaction, right? So while exchanges are great, and I use exchanges for certain things, and when I verify with my passport, by the way, if you ever do verify, always verify with the passport and not your license, because your passport has significantly less information, and your passport verifies you're an American citizen. A lot of times your license, unless you do what I do, and you have a ghost address on a license, then you're going to have serious issues. Most people are going to have serious issues. So, and even there, you're going to have more identifying information, license numbers, etc. So, but sometimes you have to verify your identity. It's just a fact. But if you've got a card that you've topped off with cash and buy a crypto like Monero, or you use Monero to top off the cards, right? So it goes cash, card, crypto, or crypto card to, you know, spendable cash or spending at a location. Now, this is a great option for people who want to use a prepaid card. Now, here's what a lot of people do, and here's what you do. What some people have done, and I'm not recommending this because you also can get yourself in financial trouble, and so I'm not recommending financial or legal. And keep in mind, crypto is a currency that does a lot of this. So if you hit it wrong, you're going to put yourself in serious trouble. But here's what people do. You get a card, like let's say American Express. So it's got a $5,000 limit. We'll keep it really small. You got a $5,000 limit. I buy a coin like Monero. I use a privacy coin like Monero because even if there's a quote-unquote paper trail of you getting the coin, once you move forward to that coin, it doesn't matter. I can use that coin to actually top off these cards, and then the card becomes anonymous because it was bought with anonymous Monero. So that is a great way where you can have complete anonymity. Now, you're not actually tied to a bank, but you are using a card with a logo on it like American Express or Visa or MasterCard that pretty much every merchant will accept. And that's how you can use a card to make purchases anonymously. Now, if you do the exact same system with Bitcoin, most of the time, unless you've used Tor, coin shufflers, and even something like Lightning Network, you're going to have a better, maybe even a remote operating system, maybe using something like Tails with Tor on it. You're going to have a little better chance. But Bitcoin doesn't have privacy features built in like Monero. So that's a situation you need to keep in mind when you're going through this process. Now, if you're ever tied directly to a bank, anonymity doesn't exist unless you're offshore. So keep that in mind. That's why the option 3, you can be tied to a bank completely anonymous, but it's going to be offshore. In America, with the Patriot Act, it's not possible. So a lot of people are looking for private banking in America. Those two things don't exist anymore. It doesn't matter who you are. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. Did I just say Steve Jobs? Fortunately, Steve Jobs, RIP. What I meant to say was Tim Cook, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, the richest people in the world, Warren Buffett, do not have anonymous banking in the United States unless they bought the bank. That would be the only way. Also, rest in peace to Steve Jobs. He didn't have anonymous banking either. But yeah, I mean, the situation is those two things are an oxymoron. So a lot of people are trying to sell anonymous bank in the United States. It's not possible. But you can tie yourself to that logo. And that's almost the most important thing for spending power. So there's two ways to do it. You can use cash to buy Monero to top off a card to spend that card. It's an option. Or people will use a separate credit card to buy a privacy coin to top off a card to spend the card. So the paper trail gets lost in Monero's privacy system. But keep in mind, in that scenario, you're dealing with debt. So you still owe American Express the 5, 10, 15, 20, however much $1,000 you spent. Now, if whatever cryptocurrency you're buying is going up in value, and I know there's a lot of people maxing out their credit cards buying cryptocurrencies recently and making a lot of money, but eventually that bubble's going to pop and there's going to be people left holding the bag and you're going to owe 20 grand to American Express. And if you sold all your crypto, it's going to be worth 8 grand. And so you're in debt. So I'm not recommending this to anybody. I know a lot of people are doing it. But even if you take a smaller sum of money, like a sum of money you're going to spend, that's how you take a sum of money that you're going to spend anyway and anonymize it. So anyway, I just wanted to break this down for you. This is a topic that comes up a lot because people want to know how to be completely anonymous. Those are really the only options, but they're really good options that everyone can achieve. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. I recommend level 1 and level 2 for 100% of you. I recommend level 3 for once you become successful. And I recommend level 4 if you're ambitious. And it's a great, level 4 is my favorite, and it's the one that I exercise the most because you can basically take traceable assets and make them disappear, which is kind of my favorite thing to do, whether it's with my cards or whether it's with my money. Well, having 4 kids, I'm really good at making money disappear. But outside of that, this is kind of the system. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit the thumbs up, put out new videos here on Privacy X Project every single day, teaching you how to be invisible in a digital world. All kinds of amazing content coming up, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.